My name is Luke Pierce, and I'm 16 years old. I come from a family that's always had everything: money, status, a mansion on the outskirts of Kansas City. My dad is a top real estate mogul, and my older sister, Amanda, is a perfect image of success, always making headlines for her achievements. Meanwhile, I've always been the screw-up. While they play golf at exclusive clubs, I get lost in books, questioning why I can never seem to fit in. I've always felt like the black sheep of the family, pushed aside for being too quiet, too different. I never expected my 16th birthday to be any different, but this year, everything changes. The day I find out I've been written out of the will is the day I realize that the Pierce family's perfect image isn't just a lie, it's a prison. And it's one I'm ready to break free from. But before I can, a stranger knocks on the door. And he's about to turn everything I thought I knew upside down. The house was eerily quiet as I made my way downstairs. Usually, by now, there would have been a stream of birthday greetings, my mom and dad scrambling around the kitchen, and Amanda, my perfect older sister, probably still lying in bed. But today, nothing. I wasn't sure if I should be relieved or anxious. Silence felt wrong here. A single sticky note on the kitchen island caught my eye. Gone to the lawyer. Don't mess with anything. We'll be back soon. My mom's handwriting. A wave of unease washed over me. They'd never left me out of something this important. Not unless they were hiding something. I grabbed my phone to text Amanda, but there was nothing. Just a single message from her earlier: meeting today, don't wait up. Love you. It wasn't like her to be so distant. I grabbed a mug, poured myself some coffee, and sat down at the counter, staring at the message. What was going on? I felt something shift deep in my gut. Something wasn't right. As the minutes ticked by, I found myself wandering into the family office. My father's old leather chair creaked as I sat behind his desk, something I hadn't done in years. His office always smelled of cigars and money. But today, it reeked of something else: secrecy. I rifled through his desk, half-heartedly looking for something, anything, that might explain this strange morning. It didn't take long. A small envelope, partially hidden behind a stack of legal papers, caught my attention. My name was scribbled across it in my father's scrawl, as if he was trying to keep it from anyone else. I opened it. It was a photocopy of the will. The one that should have been locked away for safekeeping. I skimmed over the words, a few formalities about estate and assets, and then my eyes froze. I was not listed as a beneficiary. Nothing. Nada. Not a single line about me. Below that, in my father's handwriting, all assets go to Amanda Pierce and Evelyn Pierce. My mother. I couldn't breathe. The room began to close in on me. For a moment, I wondered if I was seeing things. But the red ink slashed across my name was unmistakable. I sat back, stunned. I had always known my father favored Amanda, but to completely erase me, to leave me with nothing on my birthday? I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and called the family lawyer, Hunter Blackwell, the one man who knew all our dirty little secrets. He answered almost immediately. Luke, it's your birthday, huh? I could hear the nervousness in his voice. I'm looking at a copy of the will, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not in it. At all. There was a long silence on the other end. I don't know what you're talking about, Luke. The will is final. Your father. No, Hunter, I interrupted. Don't bullshit me. What's going on? He sighed. Listen, Luke. I can't explain over the phone. Just come to the office. Now. I hung up without a word. I didn't need to hear more. I already knew what was coming. Something wasn't right, and my parents were at the center of it. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, still in shock. The house felt colder as I stepped outside. The sky was gray, matching the knot in my stomach. Every step I took felt like a countdown. I'd barely made it to the driveway when a car pulled up. A black sedan, one I didn't recognize. The engine cut off and the door creaked open. A tall, withered man stepped out. He was older than my father by a few years, wearing a dark overcoat, his face partially obscured by a hat. He walked toward me with purpose, and I could feel my heart rate spike. He stopped just a few feet away, his cold eyes locking onto mine. "I'm David Weston," he said, his voice deep but steady. "And I'm your grandfather's son." I blinked, confused, trying to process what he had just said. "Grandfather's son?" I repeated, shaking my head. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm your real family, Luke. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. And you need to hear the truth." The words didn't sink in at first. It felt like a bad dream. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the sudden appearance of this stranger claiming to be my grandfather's son. But something in the way he spoke, with such conviction, such urgency, made me realize that I couldn't afford to ignore him. "Not anymore. I'm not here to hurt you," he continued, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "But if you want to know the truth about your family, you have to listen to me. There are things your parents have kept hidden from you. Secrets that could destroy them." I was about to speak when I heard the faint sound of tires crunching on gravel. Another car. It was my father's car, pulling into the driveway. David Weston looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I suggest you listen carefully, Luke," he said, his voice low. "Because everything you think you know is a lie. And if you don't act quickly, it will be too late." I didn't know it then, but that moment, the arrival of this mysterious man, would mark the beginning of a series of events that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. Everything I'd ever trusted. As my father stepped out of the car, I knew one thing for sure: my life was about to change forever. I didn't know what to say. My head was spinning, and the words coming out of David Weston's mouth felt like they were coming from someone else. "I'm your grandfather's son." The sentence lingered in the air like smoke, impossible to believe, but undeniable in its intensity. "You're who?" I stammered, stepping back. David's face was calm, but his eyes burned with something deeper. "Your grandfather's son. The man your father never talks about." He took a slow step forward, his hands in his coat pockets, his gaze unwavering. "I know this is a lot, but you need to understand, your family is hiding something. And I'm here to help you uncover it." I tried to make sense of what he was saying, but the words wouldn't connect. David Weston was claiming to be part of my family, a family my father had never once mentioned. And now, on my birthday, at the moment when everything should have been about me, a stranger was thrusting himself into my life like a bomb. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about," I said, my voice rising. "You think you can just show up and tell me I'm related to you? What do you want?" David didn't flinch. "I want you to know the truth. What your parents have been keeping from you all these years. Your inheritance, Luke. It's not what you think." I was confused, frustrated. He was speaking in riddles, but his calm demeanor made me hesitate. There was something he knew, something buried deep. And even though I didn't trust him, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something crucial was at play here, something that had to do with my family's wealth, my father, and now, the man standing in front of me. "I'm listening," I said, not sure why I even bothered. David took a deep breath. "Your father and we were never close. After your grandfather died, things went south. I found out things about the family. Ugly things. I was cut out of the will. Disowned. But you, Luke, you have a shot at something they didn't want you to have." He paused. "You're not just the son of a real estate mogul. You're the heir to something far more dangerous." "Dangerous?" I felt the weight of his words sink in. "What do you mean, dangerous?" I asked, suddenly aware of how small the world felt. His answer wasn't what I expected. "There's a lot your family's been hiding. And it's all tied to the fortune they've built. Your father's empire wasn't built on clean money, Luke. It's all built on corruption, blackmail, and murder. I stared at him. Murder? The word felt like a punch in the gut. You're crazy. David nodded slowly. You'll find out soon enough. You think your family's perfect? Think again. You've been lied to. And it's time for you to wake up. The door to the house opened behind me. I turned, my heart slamming in my chest. It was my father. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes locked onto David with a chill that made my skin crawl. Luke, get in the car, my father said. His voice was low, but there was no mistaking the authority in it. He didn't look at David, he kept his gaze fixed firmly on me. Now. David didn't flinch. You're wasting your time, he said to my father. It's already too late. I said, get in the car, my father repeated, more forcefully this time. I hesitated, looking between them. My father's face was hard, harder than I'd ever seen it before. I had to make a choice. David stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Don't listen to him, Luke. Your family will do anything to keep the truth buried. And your father, he shook his head slowly. He's not the man you think he is. My father's jaw tightened. He was losing his patience, and I could feel it, like a pressure building up in the air. I took a step back. What is going on? I asked, the words slipping out of me before I could stop them. David looked at me with a mixture of pity and something darker. It's all lies, Luke. Everything. Your father didn't build this empire. Your grandfather did. And when your father took control, he buried everything, the blood, the deals, the destruction that came with it. I felt sick. My head was spinning, and my hands were trembling. My father was getting closer, his footsteps heavy on the gravel, his eyes locked on mine like a predator stalking its prey. I don't know what you're trying to say, I muttered, panic rising in my chest. But I'm not listening to you. David's face softened. You don't have a choice. They're watching you. You're already in too deep. Suddenly, there was a screeching sound from behind me. I turned to see a black SUV pulling into the driveway, its headlights blinding. It stopped just short of my father's car. 3 men stepped out. They weren't dressed in suits, but the way they moved, the cold, controlled way they stepped forward, told me they weren't here for a friendly visit. My father stiffened, his eyes narrowing as they approached. He didn't seem surprised, just resigned. You brought them here? I asked, looking at David. David's eyes flickered with something like regret. They're here to make sure the truth never comes out. I turned to my father, who now stood with his back to the car, hands in his pockets, his face like stone. What the hell is going on, Dad? I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he nodded toward the men in the black SUV. Get in the car, Luke. We're going home. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Something in me was telling me that this was it. This was the moment everything changed. David stepped between us, standing tall and unwavering. You don't have to go with him, David said, his voice sharp. You can still choose. My father's gaze flicked to David, then back to me. His eyes darkened. I said, get in the car, he repeated, his voice cold now, a threat in every syllable. The air was thick with tension. My heart pounded in my chest, my thoughts racing. For a moment, I stood frozen, caught between my father's demand and David's cryptic warnings. Then, like the breaking of a dam, everything collapsed into chaos. One of the men from the SUV made a sudden move, stepping toward me, and that's when I realized I wasn't in control anymore. The danger had already arrived. I didn't know what to expect when I stepped inside the car with my father, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold silence that followed. The engine rumbled to life as we sped down the winding driveway, my father's knuckles white on the steering wheel. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. It was as if the world outside had frozen. The wind swept the leaves across the road in a lazy dance, while the car seemed to glide over the asphalt, carrying the weight of the tension building between us. I had so many questions, but all I could manage was one thought. What the hell was going on? I knew I had to confront him, confront the family I thought I knew. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. The truth was suffocating, and I could feel the walls of this carefully constructed life closing in on me. Finally, my father spoke, his voice low and controlled. "You're making a mistake, Luke," he said, eyes still locked on the road ahead. "You don't know what you're dealing with." I didn't know how to respond. What could I say? He was right, in a way. I didn't know the full extent of what was going on, but every step I took into this mess, the more I could feel myself sinking deeper into something dark. Something dangerous. What happened to your grandfather, my father continued, wasn't just about money. It's never been about money. You'll understand when you're older. Just stay out of it. Stay out of it? My mind screamed in protest. How could I stay out of it now? Everything I had believed about my family was slipping through my fingers like sand. The truth was calling, and I was only beginning to see how deep the lies ran. The car turned onto the main road, and I noticed the black sedan from earlier following us, just a few cars behind. The same vehicle. The same dark figures inside. My pulse quickened. I wasn't imagining it. They were following me. I glanced at my father, but his expression didn't change. "Who are they?" I asked. "Don't worry about them," he muttered. "They're just people who want things. People who'll do anything to keep the past buried." That didn't sit right with me. Not at all. I could feel the weight of his words. And yet, the more he said, the more I realized there was something my father wasn't telling me. Something big. We reached the office building, the one that had been the center of the Pierce family empire for years. I had never really thought much about it, but today it felt different. The cold glass doors, the sterile lobby, the people milling about in suits, everything felt foreign. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken words. "We need to get this done quickly," my father said, his tone shifting. "Just follow my lead, Luke." I followed him into the elevator, my thoughts racing. We passed the receptionist without a word, and the elevator doors slid shut with a mechanical hum. My father's gaze was distant, his jaw tight as we ascended to the top floor, the heart of the family business. When the doors opened, the last thing I expected was to find Hunter Blackwell, the family lawyer, waiting for us. But there he was, standing near the glass wall, looking out over the city below. His expression was unreadable, but when he saw me, his lips twitched into a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Luke," he said, as if it was an afterthought. "Glad you could join us." There was something off about him. A shift in the air. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the unease I felt grew. My father walked over to Hunter, his voice low. "We need to finalize the transfer." "Of course," Hunter replied, his voice smooth, practiced. "The documents are ready." He handed my father a thick envelope. The seal was official. Government issued. I didn't need to ask what it was. I already knew. "Luke," my father said, looking over his shoulder. "I need you to sign these." I blinked. "Sign what?" "Your grandfather's will," he said, as if it were nothing. "It's time to put things in motion." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "You already rewrote the will." I saw it. Hunter chuckled softly. "The one you saw was a draft," he said. "This one's final. It's been signed, sealed, and now it needs to be delivered. It's your inheritance, Luke." I couldn't breathe. I was seeing red. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. And they had been controlling me all along. But there was something else. Something in the back of my mind, nagging at me. A feeling I couldn't shake. I turned toward Hunter, my voice sharper than I intended. "What's in this will?" What's really in it? Hunter didn't look at me directly. You'll see soon enough, he said with a thin smile. It's just a formality. A formality. The word echoed in my mind as I took the pen and signed my name on the dotted line. The finality of it hit me like a freight train. I was no longer just part of the family. I was now a pawn, a tool in whatever game they were playing. But as I signed, something caught my eye, a small slip of paper wedged between 2 pages of the will. My father didn't see it. Neither did Hunter. But I did. I couldn't resist. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. And that's when the world tilted. I unfolded the paper. The text was small, barely legible. But I could make out the words. The real heir is not Luke Pierce. I froze. My stomach churned. Before I could process what it meant, the door to the office slammed open. A figure stepped inside, their presence sudden, commanding. It was David Weston. And he was holding a folder. A folder that looked far too important. That's not the will you should be signing, David said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. My father's face went pale. Hunter looked like he'd seen a ghost. Who are you? My father's voice was a growl now. David didn't answer. Instead, he held up the folder. The truth is in here, he said, his eyes never leaving my father. And it's time for Luke to know exactly who he is. The room fell deathly silent. I felt my heart stop in my chest. The truth was right in front of me. And it was darker than I ever imagined. I couldn't breathe. The weight of David Weston's words hit me like a freight train. My family's entire empire was built on lies, corruption, and murder. My father's calm demeanor had shattered, but the unsettling silence in the room told me everything I needed to know. The truth was much worse than I could have imagined. David stood there, his presence filling the room, waiting for my father's response. My father's jaw clenched, his fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. His face was pale, his eyes darting between me and David, calculating. This is not your business, David, he said, his voice low, warning. Leave it alone. David didn't flinch. I'm not leaving, William. It's time your son knew the truth. My father's expression hardened. He was trying to remain composed, but the tension in the room was palpable. I could feel it tightening around me, the air growing heavier with each passing second. What truth? I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed to hear it from him, to know just how deep the hole went. What the hell are you talking about? David's eyes softened for a brief moment, but his next words cut through me like a knife. Your grandfather didn't just build his fortune from real estate. He was involved in something far darker. The deals they made, they're not just about money, Luke. They're about power. And power comes at a price. I stared at him, my mind reeling. Power at a price. I'd heard rumors, vague whispers in the family about shady dealings, but I had never imagined it went this far. This wasn't just corporate corruption, this was something bigger, more dangerous. Don't listen to him, my father said, his voice rising. He's making up stories, Luke. He's trying to tear this family apart. David shook his head. The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard you try to bury it. He glanced at me, his gaze intense. You're a part of this, whether you know it or not. The things your father has done, the things he's hidden from you, it's all going to come crashing down. My father slammed his fist on the desk. Enough. His voice boomed, making me flinch. You're out of line, David. This is family business. Stay out of it. David didn't flinch. You can't keep running from your past, William. And you can't keep Luke in the dark forever. He has a right to know. The words hung in the air. A right to know. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. My whole life had been a carefully curated lie. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, the pieces were starting to come together, but the full picture was still out of reach. "Luke, get in the car," my father barked, turning toward the door. "Now." I stood frozen. The words didn't register at first. Get in the car? Where were we going? What was going on? But before I could make a move, David stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Don't listen to him," David repeated, his voice quiet but urgent. "Your father's taking you into something much darker than you can imagine. You need to see the truth for yourself. You need to go to the archives." The archives. It sounded like a bad idea, but something in my gut told me this was my only chance to uncover the full truth. I could feel the weight of David's words pressing down on me, pulling me toward a decision I didn't want to make. But I couldn't back down now. My entire world had been shattered in the last few hours, and I needed answers. "Where are they?" I asked, my voice shaking. David nodded toward the back of the office. "Follow me. We're going to where it all started." My father didn't move. He just stood there, eyes narrowed, watching us. I could see the anger in his eyes, but also something else, fear. I took a deep breath and turned toward the door, my footsteps heavy. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The basement was cold and musty, the air thick with the scent of dust and old paper. The walls were lined with shelves filled with boxes, files, and forgotten memories. The only light came from a single overhead bulb that flickered occasionally. It looked like something out of a noir film, dark, claustrophobic, and suffocating. David led me down the narrow corridor to a large metal door at the far end of the room. He didn't hesitate, just unlocked it with a key from his pocket and pushed it open. Inside was a treasure trove of documents, old ledgers, and legal papers stacked high. This was where the family secrets were buried. He walked over to a file cabinet and pulled out a manila folder. The edges were worn, as if it had been handled too many times. "This is where it all began," David said, handing me the folder. "This is the wool that never saw the light of day." I opened it cautiously. The first few pages were legal jargon, terms I barely understood. But then, something caught my eye. A name. My grandfather's name, written in bold letters across the top of a legal contract. Underneath, there was a clause that didn't make sense. "All assets shall be transferred to the rightful heir upon completion of the family's secret project." Secret project? My mind raced. What the hell was this? David stepped closer, his voice low. "This project, Luke, it's the key to everything. Your grandfather's fortune wasn't just about real estate. It was about control. And that control extended far beyond anything you can imagine." I stared at the document, trying to piece together the fragments of information. The air felt colder now, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. "Your father's been hiding this for years," David continued. "He's protected the family business, no matter the cost. But it's all coming to an end. And so is your chance to escape this mess." Suddenly, a sound from behind me caught my attention. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. I turned just in time to see the door swing open. It was my father. "Enough," he said, his voice cold. "You've seen enough." David stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "It's too late for that, William. Luke deserves to know the truth." The air between us crackled with tension. My heart raced as I waited for my father's next move. I could feel it building, a confrontation was coming. And the truth, the real truth, was just within reach. But would I survive it? I felt the cold weight of the gunmetal gray folder in my hands. David had been right. My father's empire wasn't built on legal contracts and goodwill. It was built on violence, secrets, and a buried past that was clawing its way to the surface. The truth hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't just fighting for a piece of the family wealth. I was fighting for my life. David had led me to this place, the abandoned warehouse near the edge of town, a location that seemed too obscure to be important. But I could feel the tension in the air. My father was close, I could sense it. And if he was close, then so was his reach. The past I had been blissfully ignorant of was now catching up to me at a terrifying speed. Luke, you have to understand, David's voice broke through the haze in my mind. Your father is capable of anything. If he feels threatened, if he feels like you're a risk to his empire, he will make sure you're out of the picture. I barely heard him. My focus was on the folder in my hands. Inside were contracts, financial records, and something that looked like a confession. There was no going back now. Whatever this document revealed, whatever the cost, I had to know. The answers were in these pages. A sharp sound cut through the silence. Footsteps. Too close. I snapped the folder shut and hid it under my jacket, just as the door creaked open. I turned quickly, my pulse spiking. 3 men walked into the room, their faces hidden by shadows, their presence like a weight on my chest. They were wearing dark suits, looking far too professional to be friendly. I knew instinctively they weren't here for a casual chat. David, one of them said in a low voice, "We need to talk." I couldn't see his face clearly, but there was something about the way he spoke that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just a demand, it was a warning. David stepped forward, but he didn't take his eyes off me. "Luke, get out of here. Go. Now." "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice trembling, though I tried to hide it. "We need to deal with this now. We need to expose them." David's eyes hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Luke." "Not yet. Just trust me. Go." Before I could protest, the door slammed shut behind him. I stood frozen in the room, the sound of distant traffic outside echoing in the silence. My mind was racing, my body was trembling. This was it. I had to make a choice. Go after the truth, or walk away and pretend like everything was normal. But nothing could ever be normal again. I ran out the back door of the warehouse, the air cold and damp against my skin. I needed to get to the lawyer's office. There was only one way to end this, and it was in those documents. If they didn't stop me, I might just have a chance at putting this all behind me. At taking back my life. But as I reached the parking lot, something caught my eye. A black car. Just like the one from earlier. The same car that had been tailing me, lurking like a shadow, following me everywhere I went. I froze. The door opened, and 2 figures stepped out. It was my father's men. I felt a rush of panic, but I didn't have time to think. I turned, sprinting toward my car, the sound of footsteps pounding behind me. I could feel their presence closing in, but there was no stopping now. The engine roared to life as I slammed the door shut, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The black car was gaining on me. I floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching as I tore out of the parking lot. The road ahead blurred, the trees on either side whipping past at a dizzying speed. "Keep going," I muttered under my breath. "Just keep going." But even as I drove faster, I could feel their eyes on me. The car behind me didn't slow down. In fact, it was getting closer, its headlights blinding in the darkening night. I slammed on the brakes, jerking the car to the side just as the black sedan swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision. I could hear the tires squeal, feel the rush of wind as they passed me. But I didn't let up. I took a sharp turn down an unfamiliar road, hoping they wouldn't be able to follow. But luck wasn't on my side. The sedan made the same turn, its headlights flickering like eyes in the dark. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. They weren't just following me. They were hunting me. I pushed the car to its limits, speeding down the winding road, praying that somehow I would find a way to lose them. The trees seemed to close in on me, the narrow road growing smaller, more treacherous. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from David. "It's too late. Get out now. They know." Before I could respond, the sedan lurched forward, its bumper slamming into the back of my car with a sickening crunch. I swerved, barely staying on the road, my heart skipping a beat. They were pushing me off course. The next few moments felt like slow motion. My car fishtailed. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, trying to regain control. But I was losing. The black car was still there, pressing closer, closing the gap. I knew what they wanted. I knew what they were after. And I realized, with sickening clarity, that I might not make it out of this alive. I glanced to the side. The only escape was a narrow gap between two trees, just wide enough for my car to slip through. Without thinking, I threw the wheel to the side, steering into the gap, praying I wouldn't hit anything. The car bounced, tires screeching as I barely squeezed through. I could hear the black sedan's engine roaring behind me. I glanced back once more. The car was gone. I didn't stop to look again. I pushed the accelerator to the floor and drove straight into the night, unsure of what was ahead but knowing I couldn't stop. Not yet. The silence was suffocating. My car hummed as I sped through the streets, the headlights cutting through the night like a blade. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to keep moving. I could still feel their eyes on me, the men in the black sedan, the shadows that followed me from the moment I uncovered the truth. The truth. It had always been right there, staring me in the face. My family wasn't just built on wealth and power, it was built on fear, deceit, and blood. And now, it was all collapsing around me. Everything you thought you knew is a lie, David's words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of how deep the deception ran. Your family will do anything to protect their secrets. The weight of the folder in my lap was unbearable. Inside it was everything I needed to end this, the evidence, the confession, the document that would expose them all. But would it even be enough? Could it take down the empire they'd built? I glanced in the rearview mirror, my pulse quickening. The black sedan was there, still tailing me. They had been watching me for hours, always just a step behind. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. If I didn't act now, if I didn't take control, I would be swallowed whole by the darkness that had been hiding in my family for generations. The road ahead twisted, and I took the turn too fast. My tires screeched as the car fishtailed. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles turning white, but I couldn't slow down. Not now. Not when the truth was so close. I pushed the pedal to the floor, the engine roaring as I sped through the night. But it wasn't fast enough. The black sedan was gaining on me. The headlights in my rearview mirror loomed closer and closer. I had no choice but to take another risk. I veered off the road, skidding onto a narrow dirt path, the car jerking beneath me. The black sedan followed suit, its tires kicking up dirt and gravel. This was my last chance. I slammed my foot on the brake, causing the car to slide to a halt. The sedan tried to follow but lost control, sliding into a tree with a deafening crash. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I threw the car into reverse and sped down the path, the trees flying past in a blur. I knew exactly where I was going now. The lawyer's office. I didn't have time to think about the danger I was putting myself in. All I knew was that this was my chance to expose everything. All the lies, all the crimes, they had to come to light. If I didn't act now, I would be stuck in this web of deceit forever. As I pulled into the parking lot of the office building, I saw the lights flicker on in the windows. Someone was inside. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the folder and ran toward the door, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of the evidence burning in my hands. The door opened with a creak. Inside, Hunter Blackwell was sitting behind the desk, looking up at me with a mix of surprise and something darker. "You shouldn't have come here, Luke," he said, his voice cold, calculating. "You think you can just expose everything? You think you're ready for what comes next?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat. Instead, I slammed the folder onto his desk. The contents spilled out, the contracts, the confession, everything. His eyes flickered with recognition, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "You have no idea what you're doing," Hunter whispered. "I think I do," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "It's over." Your empire, your lies. They end now. Hunter looked at me for a long moment. His hand trembled as he reached for the phone on his desk, but I was faster. I grabbed his wrist, pinning it to the desk. Don't bother, I said. You're not getting away this time. His eyes widened, but he didn't fight back. For a moment, we just stood there, the tension between us thick enough to cut with a knife. The truth was finally out. The power they'd held for so long was crumbling. I'm not afraid of you, Hunter, I said, my voice low, but firm. You're not the one in control anymore. He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You think you've won? You've exposed everything, but you have no idea who you're really up against. Your father, he's still out there. He won't stop. He won't let you destroy what he's built. I felt the coldness of his words seep into my bones, but I didn't flinch. I'm done running, I said. And so are you. As I turned to leave, a sound echoed in the distance, a car door slamming shut, footsteps on the pavement. I didn't need to look. I knew who it was. I was no longer afraid. The door burst open just as I stepped outside. My father stood there, his eyes wild, a gun in his hand. Don't you dare, I said, my voice steady but laced with something darker. You can't control me anymore. He hesitated, just for a moment. Then, the gun lowered. The tension in the air cracked, the moment shattering like glass. You don't know what you're doing, Luke, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I know exactly what I'm doing, I replied. I'm taking control of my own life. My father didn't speak. Instead, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. And for the first time, I felt a sense of peace. The empire had fallen. The truth had won. I stood there, alone in the quiet aftermath, knowing that I had made the right choice. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it was mine to walk. I had finally broken free. And nothing could ever take that away from me.